Another woman has come forward with a harassment incident involving San Diego Mayor Bob Filner. KPBS Metro reporter Sandia Dirk spoke exclusively today with Laura Fink, a political consultant who was a Filner congressional staffer in 2005. Fink says the mayor's inappropriate treatment of women was evident long before he took over the city's top job.
So welcome today. And first, go ahead and tell me your name and what it is you do.
My name is Laura Fink, and I am a co-founder of Fink and Hernandez Consulting, which is a political strategy, nonprofit, and communications firm.
And, today you're here to talk a little bit about some of your experiences with the mayor. So can you tell me how you met the mayor?
I met the mayor in 2004 when I was interviewing for a position on his staff. I was hired to serve on his campaign staff, originally as his deputy campaign manager, and I worked for him from 2004 to 2006.
And you had an experience with Mayor Filner during that time when he was a congressman. Can you tell me what happened?
That's correct. One of my duties was to serve as his fundraiser, in addition to some communications work and everything from answering the phone to staffing him at events. And I was in charge of one of our first big fundraisers of the campaign, and it was a contentious and difficult campaign, and we were gearing up for it by doing some fundraising. It was a large event. It was a formal dinner. It was my first event that I had done, so I was particularly proud of it. There were 3 tables at the event, and we were rotating the congressman from table to table between courses. And so I walked up to him, and I stood by him so that I could wait for the conversation to pause and escort him to the next table. And during which one of the attendees at the party was giving me credit and saying I had done a wonderful job and that I had worked my tush off for him and that he should appreciate my efforts. And I was standing, I'm 5'10", I was standing next to him, and he turned to me and he said, "Turn around." And as a staffer, I know it sounds silly to just do it, but you just do it. And so I turned around, and he proceeded to take his hand and pat me on my posterior and laugh and say, "No, it's still there."
How did that make you feel that the person you were working for sort of treated you like that?
In the moment, you're kind of in shock. And so I just escorted him to the next table, walked to kind of outside of the dining room where I was sitting with other staff members, and you're kind of in disbelief that it happened. It definitely caused a pause at the event. It was a rather boisterous event, and it was fun. And so the other tables were having fun. I wouldn't say that it was a showstopper, but certainly gave the folks at the table I was at pause. And as I sat in the wings and thinking about it, you kind of at first you're in shock, and then it registers something really negative and awful had just happened to me.
Did you confront the then Congressman, now Mayor Filner, about this incident at all?
It took a few days for me to process, I think, because your first inclination is that didn't really happen. And, if it did happen, what do I do about it? But the more that I thought about it, the more upset I became. And the more I knew, I'm someone, I went to a women's college, I'm a feminist, I am someone who believes in strong women. It's one of the reasons I got into politics, and I knew that I had to respond, and I knew that the appropriate response would be to document it. So and I also wanted to remember the facts while they were fresh in my mind, and so I documented the incident a few days later, and I emailed it directly to the congressman at his personal account, and I also CC'd our chief of staff at the time.
And did you get any response from him?
Our chief of staff called me back almost immediately, as I recall, within 24 hours. And he asked me what I wanted to do. And in the email, I had requested an apology, and I had requested assurances that this sort of behavior would not happen to anyone else, any other member of his female staff.
Can I ask you who the chief of staff was at the time?
He's actually the same person who is his current chief of staff, Tony Buckles.
Okay. And what did you say you wanted to do? I know you had said you wanted an apology. Did you get that apology?
The congressman, and I'm not recalling exactly how many days later it was, but within the week, came up to me, pulled me aside, and mumbled, "And I'm sorry," and then followed it up with telling me that, but I didn't really understand what had happened.
That you didn't understand what had happened?
I didn't understand.
How did that make you feel?
Well, I felt rather intimidated in his presence to begin with, and when something like that happens to you, as strong as you want to feel, you don't necessarily feel strong. You want to act strong, but you don't feel strong. And so I was certainly dissatisfied with that, but I didn't really know what else I could do.
Absolutely. And, this is something you're coming forward with it now. Can I ask you why you're bringing your story to the table?
I think I've given thought to talking about this for some time. I think at the time I didn't go public with it because I was building a career in politics. I'm from San Diego. I love it here, and I knew that I wanted to build my career here. And in politics, your reputation is critical, and references are the gold standard by which you're judged. And so I knew that this was going to be important to me continuing to work. I also knew that Bob Filner has a reputation with regard to people he sees as political enemies. He has a reputation for swift retribution and really long grudges. And I didn't want to be on the wrong end of that.
Absolutely. And yet now you are coming forward because you were telling me earlier that you wanted to lend your voice to the chorus of we heard from Irene McCormack Jackson yesterday, and now you're telling us your story.
Absolutely. I don't know Irene, but I respect her for coming forward. I think it takes on her part, particularly because the wounds are so fresh, it takes a lot of courage, and so I admire that. I also, over the course of working in the community over the years, when you have this story and you occasionally will reference it or talk about it, it was surprising to me how many women, political candidates, leaders, community leaders that ran organizations that had interface with Congressman Filner and now Mayor Filner, how many of them had experienced similar things and how many of them were afraid to come forward because of his position. One of the commonalities that I found, too, is that all of these women had one thing that they shared in common with Bob, and that was that he had some sort of power over them. They were a candidate seeking his endorsement. They were a community leader whose organization had interface with the mayor's or the member of Congress's office. He tends to, in my observation and in the stories that have been told to me, tends to operate only with folks that are beholden to him in some way, whether it's in some public capacity.
Like you as a young staffer.
Like me as a young staffer. Mm-hmm.
The last question I want to ask you is coming forward, is there a strength in that for you? I think there's a strength in knowing that I'm doing something that might make things a little bit better. I want to, it's one of the things that I have reservation about is you don't want this to define you. I've worked in my career. I've done so many different things. I was a co-founder of Run Women Run, and I believe in getting women elected to office. I've participated in so many wonderful public servants' careers at the beginning of their careers, but I didn't want that to be a footnote and this to be, sort of written on my tombstone. I don't think we should talk about, I would rather talk about those things, but I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about what Bob Filner did to me 8 years ago. And I think there's a strength in working to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and that if it does happen again, that women feel empowered to come forward and talk about it. Thank you so much, Laura. I really thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you.
Political consultant Laura Fink speaking with KPBS Metro reporter Sandhya Dirks. Fink also says the mayor should resign. She says there are many reasons for him to step down, but only one reason for him to stay in office, and she says that reason is self-interest. We contacted the mayor's office for a response. So far, we have not received one. The mayor did respond to the sexual harassment lawsuit filed against him by former communications director Irene McCormack Jackson, saying he is saddened by the charges and, quoting now, "Once due process is allowed to unfold, I am certain there will be a better understanding of the situation," end quote. Filner also says he remains committed to the people of San Diego, quoting again, "My dreams and plans for moving this city to new heights are continuing. I humbly ask through this vicious storm of controversy, people take a moment and temper their rush to judgment." And he concludes, "I do not believe these claims are valid, and that's why due process is so important. I intend to defend myself vigorously, and I know that justice will prevail." City Attorney Jan Goldsmith joins Peggy Pico now for an in-depth look at the next steps in the lawsuit filed against the city and Mayor Bob Filner.
High-profile attorney Gloria Allred is representing the first person to file a lawsuit against the city and Mayor Bob Filner with detailed allegations of lewd and sexual harassment behavior. The mayor has hired his own attorney and released a statement saying he plans a vigorous defense. Here with more on the next steps is San Diego City Attorney Jan Goldsmith. Jan, welcome back.
It's a pleasure.
Now, the lawsuit filed by the mayor's former communication director, Irene McCormick Jackson, recounts details of alleged sexual harassment by the mayor. Does your office have to provide a defense for the mayor and for the city?
No, we represent the city of San Diego and only the city of San Diego. Under the law, the mayor can request that the city pay for a defense. And in this case, if the city council approved it, he would get outside counsel. But he would have to make that request, then there would be a hearing, and the council would make certain findings one way or the other and decide whether to pick up the defense. But we're representing the city of San Diego. I say that because there's a conflict between the city of San Diego and the mayor in a sexual harassment type case. And given the circumstances, we would rather not represent both.
Will there be a cross complaint if indeed he does hire his own attorney, the city council doesn't approve it, and no. You know, as far as paying, who's on the hook for it?
Well, in a sexual harassment case, unlike many situations where we defend an employee who is, for example, gets involved in a fender bender negligence, we defend them, we pay the judgment, and we're responsible entirely. Sexual harassment claims are a lot different. We defend the city of San Diego, but if there's found to be truth to these accusations and we have to pay money, we do have the right to cross-complain against the mayor for indemnity or reimbursement to the city. And so we're preserving that right, and we can do that in a cross-complaint or separate case. In addition, there's less of factors having to do with the ability to get the city to defend them. So it's a different animal than most cases.
Okay. Now, the mayor responded to the lawsuit in a statement saying, in part, I do not believe these claims are valid. I intend to defend myself vigorously, and I know that justice will prevail. When did your office learn of the harassment allegations, and what is your legal responsibility or your legal obligation to follow up on those types of claims?
Well, the first time we found any specifics, learned it was the press conference with Donna Fry and the two lawyers, but we didn't have identity. The first time we found an identified claimant was Gloria Allred's press conference. There's a lot of things we have to do. We obviously defend the city, and we've opened our own investigation having to do with the litigation. We will have our investigators getting statements and getting together evidence. But also, as a city, we have a zero-tolerance policy on sexual harassment, and we mean it. I've imposed that in my office. We've taken steps to protect them.
You said some very clear steps. The mayor is not allowed to meet with women. What steps? Do tell me.
Well, in our office, we've been faced with sexual harassment accusations. We take specific steps, and normally what you would do in a situation like this is put the employee on administrative leave or something along those lines. You can't do that with a mayor. So one of the things we can do is make sure he's not meeting with women alone in his office.
And he's agreed to that.
His lawyer has agreed to that, and on his behalf, as has his chief of staff and the police chief, who is involved with city facilities. That doesn't mean that we've assigned culpability. It's just a temporary step that the law requires us to do. We're going to get to the heart of this. We as a city attorney's office want to get to the truth, and we are going to do it. We've opened our own investigation, and we're going to start taking some statements on the road.
Let me ask you some details about those statements. McCormick Jackson said she saw other women being touched inappropriately by the mayor. Could those other women or city employees be subpoenaed and deposed in the suit, and would that be public record?
The answer is yes, they can be subpoenaed, they can be testified. We don't know their names yet. We want to find out who they are for two reasons. We want to see what they know and what happened, and we want to, if they're still employees, we want to take these temporary steps to protect them. Whether they're public or not, normally, if we were to get a deposition, normally they would be public. There are certain sensitive issues that that the lawyers might agree that, okay, we're going to protect them from embarrassment. So we could do that, but normally they are public.
All righty. City Attorney Jan Goldsmith, thank you so much for the update.
Thank you very much.
In other news, a women's veterans group is planning a response to the accusations against the mayor. He was supposed to deliver the keynote address at the National Military Women's Veterans Association of America fundraiser. Now, the group had already withdrawn a planned Lifetime Achievement Award for Filner. Tomorrow morning, they'll announce their next step, and they promise a no-holds-barred statement.